Unit 13, Reading 2.
Through the 80s and 90s, illegal drugs became a bigger public concern. In 1971, Nixon declared a war on drugs campaign against the illegal sale of drugs like heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. These drugs were often secretly imported from Latin America and Southeast Asia. This illegal trade fed violent crime and cost many billions of dollars each year. In the war on drugs, police received more government aid, punishments for drug crimes became stricter, and prison construction grew. As anti-drug campaigns accelerated in the 80s and 90s, hundreds of thousands of people were arrested each year. By the end of the 90s, America had the world's highest rate of people in prison. After a person was released from prison, they often had trouble re-entering society or finding work. Many prisoners were African American and Latino. This system had destructive effects on minority communities. The strict policing often looked and felt like a kind of racism. For instance, the 1992 Los Angeles riots happened after white police officers were filmed beating a black man during an arrest, but were not punished for the violence. 62 people died. In August 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait to take control of Kuwait's oil resources. President George H.W. Bush organized a large international military force which included the UK, France, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. The 1991 Gulf War had many dramatic high-tech attacks on Iraq. TV pictures showed burning oil fields and new powerful American smart weapons. Iraq's Soviet-style military was quickly defeated, but Iraq's dictator, Saddam Hussein, remained in power. Strict trade sanctions were put on Iraq to force that country to surrender its weapons of mass destruction, WMD technologies, like poison gas and nuclear bomb research. Although most of Iraq's WMDs were destroyed during the 1990s, many Americans still believed that Iraq was hiding secret WMD programs. Relations with Iraq remained tense and poor. Despite the Gulf War victory, Bush became unpopular as the national economy suddenly slowed. U.S. government debt had grown each year, and plans to increase spending were now more controversial. In 1992, a Democrat, Bill Clinton, was elected president, but the Republican and Democratic parties agreed on few ideas. Clinton planned to expand health insurance, reduce military spending, and invite Eastern Europeans into NATO, but Congress strongly opposed some of these plans. Clinton failed to create a new health care system. Congress also fought bitter disputes about new spending. In 1999, Clinton was impeached for lying about a sexual relationship with an assistant, but he was not removed. Overseas, NATO was joined by new nations in Eastern Europe. NATO fought short military conflicts in Bosnia in 1995 and 1996, then with Serbia during a crisis in Kosovo in 1999. NATO's growth and its conflict with Serbia angered a weakened and humiliated Russia. Another growing international worry was terrorism. A radical Islamic group based in Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, wanted to weaken and destroy American influence in the Middle East. Al-Qaeda bombed 2 U.S. embassies in East Africa in 1998 and planned even larger attacks in the future. Other big changes around the world affected life, work, and incomes as globalization and the internet spread. Huge new opportunities appeared in software and high-tech industries. People could now do business and use giant amounts of information with computers. As international trade and investment grew, economic competition from countries like China increased while workers' unions became weaker and manufacturing in the U.S. felt more pressure. Industries like clothing, steel, and cars moved their factories overseas, reduced their workers due to automation, or lost business. Education was now far more important to find jobs in the high-tech knowledge economy, but university costs were much more expensive now, and students often needed to get large loans for education. Low-skilled workers and workers in older industries were being hurt by globalization. Midwestern cities like Cleveland and Detroit were nicknamed the Rust Belt region because of their old shut factories. The 2000 presidential election was a hot competition. Republican George W. Bush, son of former President Bush, campaigned against Clinton's Vice President Al Gore. The voting results in Florida were not clear, but showed Bush slightly ahead. The vote count was disputed in court. The Supreme Court decided that a recount of votes would not be allowed in Florida, even though many votes had not been counted properly. Despite anger from many Democrats, George W. Bush became the new president soon after the 21st century began.